Coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to Africa Focus, where we bring you news from across the continent right here on Switch TV Kenya. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Start interacting with us on our social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya at Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. Send in an SMS via 22999 free of charge. But first, here are stories making headlines.
Africa records more than 500,000 coronavirus cases. South Africa reimposes curfew and booze ban as coronavirus cases spike.
We begin with Africa Roundup stories.
Two protesters were shot dead and a policeman was lynched in clashes in the Democratic Republic of Congo over plans to name a new head to the country's election panel. The body of one protester was taken to a hospital morgue in the city of Lubumbashi in southeastern of DR Congo. The UN official deplored the use of force by military police. An employee of the hospital confirmed that the body was that of a 32-year-old man and said he had received a gunshot wound. A UN source added that in the capital, Kinshasa, another protester was killed and a policeman was lynched after firing on the demonstrators, while several other police were injured. Public and private property, including political party offices, had been attacked and set ablaze. It is alleged that police in Kinshasa had used tear gas to break up thousands of members of President Felix Tshisekedi's Union for Democracy and Progress (UDPS) who had marched to near the seat of parliament. A Malian protest leader called for calm after 4 more people were killed in escalating demonstrations demanding President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita's resignation in the West African country's worst civil unrest in years. The capital, Bamako, was rocked by bloody demonstrations on Friday and Saturday, with witnesses saying that security forces fired live rounds during clashes with the protesters. Attempting to calm the increasingly insurgent atmosphere in Bamako, Keita announced he would dissolve the poor Sahel country's constitutional court. The court has been at the center of controversy since it overturned provisional results for parliamentary elections earlier this year, triggering protests in several cities that descended into violence, in which at least 3 were killed. Clashes dragged again in Bamako as demonstrators, angered by a long-running jihadist conflict, economic woes and perceived government corruption, insisted Keita should step down. 4 civilians, including a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, were killed overnight. 6 opposition figures were detained in recent days, of whom 1 was released, as the government cracks down on an alliance known as the June 5 movement, which is challenging deep-seated frustrations across the country. Morocco announced a return to lockdown measures in the northern port of Tangiers to smother a new outbreak of the novel coronavirus weeks after easing nationwide restrictions. The city of about 1 million inhabitants was locked down with public transport suspended, cafes and public spaces closed and movement restricted. Residents are only allowed to leave their homes in case of extreme necessity. The Interior Minister in a statement added that exceptional authorization from local authorities would be required for movement within and beyond the city. Authorities decided to reimpose the measures to prevent the spread of the virus after new infection clusters appeared. But despite masks being mandatory in public, new localized outbreaks of the disease have forced the shutdown of several cities.
Moving on, more than 500,000 cases of coronavirus have been diagnosed on the continent, with numbers climbing fast. Elsewhere, Ivory Coast reels following the death of Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly, and Madagascar's lemurs face extinction.
500,000 people in Africa have been infected with COVID-19. The number of confirmed diagnoses is climbing fast, approaching 550,000 people this weekend, according to an AFP tally using official government sources. Meanwhile, Burundi maintains its change of tack in dealing with the virus. A massive testing campaign started at 3 sites this week. The project uses the slogan, "I recover, I do not contract, and I do not contaminate." Former President Pierre Nkurunziza downplayed the severity of the pandemic. after his unexpected death in June from what the government said was heart failure. New President Ivory ventured into a new direction.
I came because I wanted to know the state of my health to see if I have the virus, because it is talked about so much here in Burundi. This is why I came to test and see if I have it.
South Africa, which accounts for almost half the cases in Africa, is hurtling towards an anticipated spike. The country reported more than 10,000 new daily infections for the first time this week. Authorities are preparing cemeteries for an influx of bodies like this one here in the capital, Pretoria. Ivory Coast's Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly died this week, shortly after returning from France, where he'd undergone treatment for a health condition. The 61-year-old was the favourite of President Alassane Ouattara in presidential elections in October. In 2011, Ouattara beat then-President Laurent Gbagbo in polls which resulted in a months-long standoff that claimed some 3,000 lives and left divisions that linger today.
Amadou was like our father. Really, he did a lot for the Ivorian nation.
French appeals judges have thrown out a bid to reopen an investigation into the 1994 assassination of Rwanda's president, which sparked a 100-day genocide that killed 800,000 people. Families of those who died when Juvenal Habyarimana's plane was shot down vowed to pursue their quest for justice. Meanwhile, Rwanda dismissed the French process as a complete farce. The decades-long battle has poisoned relations between the two countries. Almost all species of lemur, a small primate native to Madagascar, are facing extinction. Of the 107 surviving lemur species on the island, some 103 are threatened, including 33 that are critically endangered, the last stop before they are extinct in the wild. Lemur numbers have dwindled because of habitat loss through deforestation, poaching and the illegal pet trade.
And reach back as far as you can.
And finally, every week, self-taught Nigerian dancer Daniel Ajala welcomes dozens of children from a poor district of Lagos and teaches them ballet. The Leap of Dance Academy, which Ajala funds out of his own pocket, teaches pupils between the ages of 6 and 15.
Yes. For my years of understanding and reading about ballet, I know the ballet is actually for people who are actually who have money, who are from very high class, because ballet is expensive. And in this area, I know that we can actually afford the luxury of ballet or dance education. So I think it's actually a very beautiful art to introduce to our people here, because it will actually help them to know that this can be done also by themselves, by indigenous people.
The lessons are free and shoes and kits are provided to the children, most of who had never heard of ballet before they got involved.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has imposed a night curfew on suspended alcohol sales as coronavirus infections spike and the health system risks being overwhelmed.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa reimposed a night curfew and suspended alcohol sales as coronavirus infections spiked and the health system risked being overwhelmed. Coronavirus infections numbers had in recent days skyrocketed, with at least 12,000 infections recorded daily, translating to around 500 infections every hour, severely straining healthcare resources.
We've now decided that the sale, the dispensing, and the distribution of alcohol will be suspended with immediate effect. There is now clear evidence that the resumption of alcohol sales has resulted in substantial pressure being put on hospitals, including trauma and ICU units, due to motor vehicle accidents, violence, as well as related trauma that are alcohol-induced. A curfew will be put in place between the hours of 9 p.m. and 4 a.m.
South Africa's fast booze ban implemented in March was lifted in June 1st, but on July 12th, Ramaphosa repealed the move.
The storm is upon us. More than 250,000 South Africans have been infected with coronavirus, and we know that many more infections have gone undetected. Yet while infections rise exponentially, it is important to note that our case fatality rate of 1.5% is amongst the lowest in the world. This is compared to a global average case fatality rate of 4.4%.
He also ordered a curfew from 9 p.m. until 4 a.m. starting on Monday, 13th of July. Ramaphosa also outlawed family and social visits, which have been blamed for helping the virus spread.
Stay with us here on Africa Focus, still to come.
Kenya's Maasai hit hard by loss of tourism amid pandemic.
Welcome back to Africa Focus. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Moving on, tourism is a significant part of many national economies, and the immediate and immense shock to the tourism sector resulting from the coronavirus pandemic is affecting the wider economy. As governments around the world have introduced unprecedented measures to contain the virus, restrictions on travel, business operation and people-to-people interactions have brought the tourism economy to a standstill. It is no different in the heart of the majestic plains of Kenya's Masai Mara. The coronavirus pandemic is wreaking havoc, rather economic havoc. The Masai community was and still is highly dependent on tourism, but it has seen its livelihood reduced to almost nothing.
Depend on tourists to make a living in the community. We are in trouble now. There are no more tourists coming to visit us. Usually they come to see the village and pay $30, which allows us to feed our families. Today, some people are struggling to support themselves. Some are sick and cannot pay for their care.
Model depends on tourism. Tourists come into the camp and the money they pay to be in the camps for this to survive. So without this, so far what they're doing right now is that they're paying half.
Are not getting any revenue. They can't feed themselves. They can't send their kids to school. They would have no option but to look at other forms of land utilization. So whether that is fencing it off, whether it's selling it to people.
Women across the country continue to battle with violence in relationships, even during these tough times when the world is grappling with COVID-19. For women and girls in Mathare and Korogosho slums, the situation is dreadful and has increased with the pandemic, saying this is yet another pandemic. Our reporter Yasmin Hamdan spent a day in Mathare and Korogosho and filed the following story.
We meet up with 24-year-old Mercy Wanjiru, not her real name, now regrets her decision on marriage. For Mercy, what started off as a happy and promising marriage turned into a nightmare when her husband, whom she's married to for 5 years, turned against her only 6 months into marriage.
Nyumba yangu inaanza kiserani venye nilipata mimba, ikafikisha miezi 6. Mzee wangu akaanza kuwa na maneno, akienda kazi, akikaa base na marafiki zake, wanamwambia vitu. Akitoka kazi anakuja ananipiga, anaanza kuniambia mtoto si wangu, hii mimba unajua kwenye umetoa.
She recalls how the man she once loved would beat her up, stab her with a knife, threatened to kill her and even dug a grave for her in their home.
Nikimuuliza ananipiga. Ananiambia enda kupiga ufuate mama yako ama ujui mimi naweza kuua wewe. Uende wakaburu kange na mama yako huko. Sasa mtaki kuambia hivyo unaona. Design ninakwambia unaona tu anakufanya ukini kama unaanga hadi watu wenyu.
After welcoming their firstborn son, Mercy's husband still continued being violent, and worst of all, he sexually assaulted her, an ordeal that left her nursing bruises. She says this particular incident left her in tears and agony for months.
Sara kata kutoka pumwani juu niliza normal lakini niliraruka. Sio lazima ushono. Sasa tumetoka usiku tumekuja home. Si lazima mamake 3 months kabla hajaguzwa na mtu. Tumefika tu hivyo sijui ameenda amekunywa amekuja kwa nyumba. Atakulala na mimi namwambia iwezi sasa hivi bado mimi ni mgonjwa huko chini bado niko na mauzi. Akakataa na akakataa. Tuseme tu ni kama tu kurepu mtu. Akalala na mimi akabidi na ameniharibu kabisa nimerudi tena pumwani tena kushona.
However, Mercy states that the situation has worsened this year with the pandemic as there are no jobs and she is not able to fend for her child, and sometimes they are forced to go for days without food.
Kama si mabeste zangu kuja kuleta mtoto wangu chakula, hata sijui sasa angekuwa wapi. Marafiki zangu na nakipika ananiletea, ananiambia hata at least kaka na hizi kidogo zitapatia mtoto wako service leo na kesho asubuhi, unaona anamanga. Na tena akizipata pia ni maneno.
For Maureen, not her real name, life in the slum is not easy. Maureen, a mother of 3 who is in her second marriage, says her husband started becoming violent this year as she has been married for 4 years and neither did he raise a finger on her. According to Maureen, she noted a few changes in him early this year when he lost his job. She says he became violent and moody, with one instance beating her up in public.
Hao wengine wakubwa hata walikunywa tu unga ingine ya uji niliwakorogea hadi sasa ndio wako nayo kwa tumbo. Washazoea. Hivyo ndio sasa tuna survive hapa. Jana usiku nimelala njaa, hata usiseme ati kitambo, jana usiku nimelala njaa, asubuhi nimeamka nikitetemeka.
Just as Mercy, Maureen too has been forced to spend days without food, a situation that has seen neighbors giving a helping hand, of which her husband is against. However, Maureen is pleased with the president's directive of lifting county lockdown, as now she plans to go back home.
Nikimwambiaje baba manu tupatie pesa maziwa, nasikia balani jibu ananipiga, unaona. Jana shinanga kiniambia ndaja kuvunja mguu kaambia hapo nikupeanga chakula.
Unlike Maureen, who is able to exit from the horrific marriage, Mercy chooses to stay in the marriage as she has no one to seek for assistance.
Sitaangalia nyuma juu. Kulingana unajua mtu anaambia ngoaje, mtu anasoma ngana yake. Mimi sasa nimesoma, nimekuwa kwa lesson, nimekuwa na temptation mingi sana. Kutusiwa, nishaipigwa hadi nikiwa na mimba, nikaachanishwa, nikaenda kuishi kwa mabeste. Yaani nishafanya ngo vitu mingi sana. Sasa itabidi nimefanyaje? Niende tu nitulie kwetu nitafute hata kama ni job.
Ataenda marondi zake, aende kakunywe, ameze madawa, akuje kwa nyumba, anze kuniambia sijui wewe unakuwa umenizoea, wanabebanga ujinga na nijua hajapata pesa. Sasa hizo sera zote atandolea, unaona, lakini sasa mimi juu sina mahali pa kuenda, inabidi tu nimevumilia.
According to CAS Health Mercy Mwangangi, the cases of sexual gender-based violence have gone up 3 times during this COVID-19 period, most of which are being perpetrated by close relatives and guardians. Gender-based violence, sexual assault and social harassment is the order of the day here in Mathare, with many women having to bear the pain of being assaulted. However, the situation is just worsening since the outbreak of COVID-19 in the country. Yasmin Hamdan Harub, Switch TV, Mathare.
Thank you, Yasmin Hamdan, for highlighting the story of the women who are suffering in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Elsewhere, in a bid to ensure the fight against the spread of the deadly virus COVID-19 is taken back to the grassroots level, Equity Bank here in Kenya has donated PPE equipment to the county government of Kajiado, which is one of the most hit by the deadly virus. While receiving the donation, Kajiado Deputy Governor Martin Moshisho applauded Equity for its kind gesture to the county. He also urged the locals from the county to observe strict rules, saying the threat of COVID-19 is posing a devastating change in the country.
We have ring-fenced the medical staff, whether it's clinical officers, whether it's nurses, whether it is doctors, who are dealing with COVID patients for support for the next 18 months.
Ninaomba kwamba watu wetu wazidi kuhakikisha kwamba tumefuata kanuni ambazo zimetolewa na idara yetu ya afya, kwa sababu kila mmoja wetu ako na majukumu.
Crossing borders now, health workers are disinfecting Morocco's southern port southern port city of Safi. Morocco reported high coronavirus infections increasing since the outbreak began in early March, with numerous cases discovered in a fish canning factory.
Morocco reported the highest one-day increase since the outbreak began in early March in the novel coronavirus infections, with numerous cases discovered in a port city factory.
All these women make their living from the sardine canning industry. That's how they manage to support their children. Most of these women work in these factories.
The majority of the new infections were detected in a fish canning factory in the southern port city of Safi. The city was quarantined overnight on Saturday to Sunday, and it's around 300,000 inhabitants placed under a total. Morocco, with a population of around 35 million, eased virus-related restrictions on June 25th, reopening cafes, restaurants, hotels and sports halls. It also allowed domestic tourism and intercity travel.
We experienced the horror when we learned that there was a woman coming from outside of Safi to work in the cannery who spread the pandemic throughout the cannery and then throughout the city.
However, public health state of emergency has been extended until July 10th. Mask wearing continues to be mandatory and borders will remain closed until further notice. Half a dozen towns remain under strict measures due to work-related virus outbreaks, notably in the west of the country, where hundreds of cases were detected on strawberry farms in June.
Now moving on to South Africa, where 71-year-old Nomonde Bartjes became so ill she couldn't move from the bed in her Port Elizabeth home. With several pre-existing medical conditions, she feared for her life after testing positive for COVID-19. After spending 2 weeks in ICU, this mother of 5 is slowly making a recovery.
Talk about it. You don't mind. And when he checked me, I said, Doc, living in site and service.
Is that in P?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
in P. Why I die? I'm on this bed. I get off. Then I can even take a walker and go. There's my toilet. Go to. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. I was so weak. Now I'm alright. I'm getting better. 100%.
Were you worried?
I thought so, my darling. That is why, that is the first thing that came to my mind. I even told my children, when I went out of this house, all my children were here. And I asked them, I said, please, my babies, pray for me because I still want to live. I said, I still want to live. I don't want, no, I don't care for people, only care for my children. My children. I don't care what the neighbors do. As long as I ask God, and God gave me back my health.
We were so sad and we were so worried because of her age and that she's diabetic, high blood pressure and blood clots and all that. So we phoned each other and then we came here. We were praying a lot. It was worse. It was very worse. I even asked myself to God, is that the last time that I saw her? Do you mean it's the last time? Because when you've got coronavirus, nobody can see you if you're dead. There will only a box that is wrapped in plastic. It was so emotional.
That's all for now on Africa Focus, but keep the conversation going on our social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya on Twitter and on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya. Send your SMS to 23999 free of charge. A big thank you for all those who have been watching. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Until next time, do have yourself a good time.